If you're a boxing fan and never want to miss a fight, Boxing Showtimes is the app you need. This is a professional boxing schedule in your pocket that keeps you up to date on what's going on in the world of boxing. Download now.
Alright, I watched an interview that Oleksandr Usyk did with Steve Bunce on TNT Sport. Now, very good interview. Usyk talks about several things, being at the fight in Saudi Arabia last week, his father, which was a very nice little piece that they did. It's about roughly a 12-minute interview. I would recommend you go and watch it. Usyk is being asked the questions by Steve Bunce in English, but he's answering in his native language, but it is subtitled. But at the very start, in the first 2 minutes, he's asked about the Tyson Fury-Francis Ngannou fight. And he feels that the performance, I'm paraphrasing, but basically he said words to the effect of, Tyson Fury was trying to get me relaxed, right? And I guess what he's kind of alluding to is that, in his opinion, Tyson Fury underperformed to an extent in order to basically give Oleksandr Usyk a false sense of security, that make Oleksandr Usyk think, oh, this is going to be easy. I've got you. I have you. Oleksandr Usyk is way too smart to let that happen, in my opinion. But do I think that there could be potentially an element of it? To what end, though? Do I think that there are fighters out there who deliberately underperform in certain fights if they know they have a fight lined up against someone more dangerous to give them a false sense of security? Maybe. If they're trying to potentially get a fight with someone who's been reluctant to fight them beforehand, do I think that maybe them underperforming may, sway the other opponent into finally taking it? Yeah, I'm sure that does happen. Some people speculate that Oleksandr Usyk against Ches Witherspoon, and specifically against Derek Chisora, was underperforming in order to be able to get the heavyweight fights he wanted with the likes of Anthony Joshua, who he was obviously mandatory for, because there was kind of talk before, when it was Fury versus Joshua, when that fight was being talked about, and then that broke down with the arbitration ruling in Deontay Wilder's favour. There was people saying, would AJ vacate rather than fight Usyk? He obviously didn't. He fought Usyk. We know what happened. But I would always say that, yeah, I don't doubt that there are fighters who would maybe, if they knew, right, I can stop this guy, but I'm gonna let him go the rounds, and I'm not really gonna put my foot on the gas because it might tempt whoever. Do I think that happens? Yeah, but to the level people are saying with Tyson Fury and Ngannou, where you come this close to losing, you get dropped and you win by the skin of your teeth. No, that's too big a risk to take. A lot of people speculate that Triple G was deliberately underperforming against Kell Brook, and more so against Danny Jacobs, in order to get the Canelo fight, because obviously in 2016 Canelo won the title from Miguel Cotto in November 2015. He was mandated to fight Triple G. Triple G was already unified champion. I think he had the IBF and the WBA. I think Billy Joe had the WBO. Very rare that happens. WBC are the ones who normally do it, where they mandate a current champion, or they rank a current champion as mandatory challenger. They're the only ones who ever really do it. Normally doesn't happen. But he was mandated to fight Canelo. Canelo fought Amir Khan. Still, to this day, can't believe that fight ever happened. It was so bizarre when the news broke. I remember it well. And beat Amir Khan. And then he vacated his WBC World Middleweight title. It then went to Triple G, who was interim champion, I believe, at the time. And then for the next year, we didn't know what was going on until Canelo fought Chavez Jr. Now, that was after Triple G had fought Kell Brook and after he'd fought Danny Jacobs, and people speculate that Triple G in those two fights underperformed in order to secure the Canelo fight. I'm sure that there was an element. I'm sure the way he looked against Kell Brook and against Danny Jacobs specifically swayed Canelo Alvarez to say, right, we're taking the fight. But when I look at those two performances, I don't believe for a second he was underperforming, because against Kell Brook, he was in there with someone way faster and way better than the Dominic Wades of the world, who was his previous fight. And against Danny Jacobs, he nearly lost the fight. I thought he did lose the fight. If you're going to underperform to either A, get a fight with someone, or B, lull them into a false sense of security, you ain't going to risk losing the fight. Because both Fury and Triple G, who are two examples of that, both won their respective fights by the skin of their teeth. He won the Danny Jacobs fight, I think, by 2 rounds on one scorecard and by 1 round on the other two. And that was because he scored a knockdown. And again, with Fury, skin of his teeth kind of stuff. Now, I thought he deserved to win, right? Fury, legit. But you ain't going to let your opponent in that much and to hit you unnecessarily, which is what was happening, risking a cut, risking whatever, which they're claiming Fury has. I haven't seen it. If you're planning on fighting Usyk, you're not going to take that much punishment and risk any unnecessary damage if you're going to be fighting a guy in a couple of months' time. So, do I think Fury underperformed? No, I think that Francis Ngannou was the first guy to be able to expose some of the, what would you call it, Fury's body essentially starting to say no more. Some of that, because it seems like that's what's happening with Tyson Fury. I think that he's just coming to the end now where his body is just starting to show signs that it's got enough wear and tear on it. Do I think that he could have been better in there against Ngannou? Yeah. Do I think that he took Ngannou probably a bit too lightly? Yeah, I do. But at the same time, he was also forcing his work. He wasn't able to make adjustments, which he's been able to do in the past. And for me, he looked like he was on the decline in there. Do I think that he can change that for Oleksandr Usyk in a sense of with a better training camp? Do I think he'll look better against Usyk? I think he will. I think that it's going to be difficult to get worse than that. I'll put it to you like that. It's going to be difficult to get worse. A good example, again, I'm using examples here, but when Povetkin fought White and he beat Dillian White the first time, he looked terrible, and I thought there's no way he's going to look any better in the rematch. And he didn't. He looked probably actually better in the rematch than he did in the first fight, even though he won the first fight. He looked terrible both times. Awful. Fury's not that bad. He's not that far gone. I think he can improve a little bit, but not to any great extent, right? Do I think he had a bad camp? He said, and you take what he says with a grain of salt, that he was 150 pounds overweight before start camp. He said that with Derek Chisora a few weeks before the fight. And I was like, well, do I think he was overweight going into camp? Yeah, but to that extent, no. You'd really notice 150 pounds. He was about 150 pounds overweight when he was on his hiatus, and you really noticed it. In fact, his voice changed. He was so overweight. But I didn't notice anything like that in the build to this fight or going into it. He looked, not ideal, but not 150 pounds. So for me, I think that Fury, I don't think there was any underperforming in there in a sense of deliberate underperforming. I think that he was just, Francis Ngannou was able to expose the issues in Fury's game that have been there. Chisora couldn't, Dillian White couldn't, and certainly Deontay Wilder to a lesser extent couldn't. Ngannou was. So, but Oleksandr Usyk, smart character, knows the game inside and out. I think that if Fury looked shot to pieces, like really completely shot to pieces, his punch resistance was all gone, everything, he'd still take this fight very, very serious. Because he's not stupid. He knows always. It's when you don't take it serious is when you get caught out. Ask Lennox Lewis that. That's how his 2 losses came. And almost a third loss to Vitaly Klitschko because he didn't take the opponent serious. So Oleksandr Usyk definitely a student of the game. I don't think he'd be doing that at all. And I think Fury will be better in the Usyk, I was going to say rematch, in the Usyk fight. Maybe he can rematch Ngannou later on down the line, but for now, Usyk. That's the main one. That's my thoughts on this. Let me know. Went a bit longer than I thought this video, but hey, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. For now, I will leave you with that. Peace.